Welcome to the BAC Podcast, the Bible, Apostolics, and Current Events. How do the events in our world today align with the Word of God? What should be the focus of the apostolic Christian in response? How do we look at worldviews through a biblical lens? Join us for an in-depth discussion, lively conversation, and so much more as we tackle these subjects in depth. Are you ready? Let's begin right now. And now the hosts of the BAC Podcast, Brian Sexton, and pastor of Bible Apostolic Church, Huntington, West Virginia, Pastor Aaron Fairburn.
And welcome to the BAC Podcast, the Bible, Apostolics, and Current Events. I'm Brian Sexton, joined, as always, I wouldn't know who else would be joining me but Pastor Aaron Fairburn of Bible Apostolic Church. I would feel, listen, I can talk to myself, but there's nobody else, and I mean this sincerely, there's nobody else I want to do this podcast with than Pastor Aaron Fairburn. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I just want to say, brother, if you're talking to yourself, it'd be one of two things. They say that really smart people talk to themselves.
Wow.
It would either be that or you're plumb crazy.
Well, let me tell you this, and you know, we talked in the first episode that we did, the first podcast episode, about you know, kind of my background, where I'd done podcasts and I'd done talk radio and things like that. I always tell people I would, when I filled in for Tom Roten, on the way to the studio, I would kind of rehearse in my mind how I wanted to open the show, how I wanted to do it, how I wanted to structure it, because you know, I wanted to be good at it.
Yeah.
And you know, if people saw me that early in the morning, you know, in the summertime, it gets light out at 5:30 in the morning, and I would have to be in the studio at 6, ready at 6:04 to go on the air. And you know, if somebody saw me in my car talking to myself, you know, but what it did for me, Pastor, it allowed me to just hone that professionalism, so to speak, because I wasn't a professional broadcaster.
Today, they just assume you're talking on the phone.
Well, yeah, and you know, I wasn't a professional broadcaster, but one, I was getting paid for my heart. And two, I didn't want to, you know, I knew sponsors were paying for advertising on that show.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep the quality high. And so that's the same thing here. You know, I want to make sure we do a good podcast, one that's listenable and things like that. So
do you, I've got a cousin, and I know you know Alan Arthur.
You've got a lot of cousins, by the way. You're like me. I've got a lot of cousins.
My mom was one of 12 kids, if that tells you. But
so was my dad. Yeah.
Yeah. So
not the same family.
Yeah. When I was about 14, we were the exact same age. We're like less than a month apart in age, Alan Arthur and I. We were not only cousins, but best buddies, always together. Yep. He got a job at WMUL, which is Marshall University's radio program, one Sunday night hosting a Christian, I guess it was like a Christian rock show. And he would be there all night long. I can remember going down there with him and listening to him talk on the radio, and I was always kind of impressed at 14 years old well, maybe he was maybe 15 at this time, but he had done such a good job, and he was really into Christian heavy metal, which was kind of a strange thing there at that time. But anyways, radio, different thing. I enjoyed. I went down at one of the Tom Roten shows.
Yes.
Man, I said I was made for this.
Well, here's the thing, you know, even when I was 17, 18 years old, I remember probably 1991, 92, 93 probably, I would listen to an overnight sports talk show, and late at night I would call in on a national talk show. And you want to, and from time to time, I listen to some sports talk radio out of Cincinnati, and I will call in from time to time. And one, you want to have something different to say. 2, you want to not be a fanboy. You want to have a good 3 to 5 minute conversation. You want the host to keep you talking.
Yeah.
That's the goal. And if you have something intelligent to say and you're articulate and well-spoken, the host will give you room and latitude to keep talking, because it's not like, hey, I think they ought to trade that guy right there because he ain't no count.
Now, don't you be making fun of my family.
Well, no, I'm not making fun of you.
I'm just kidding.
But what I'm talking about is, and even with Tom, how I got to guest host for him was I would call in and I would try to have something articulate to say.
Yeah.
I would try to have something of substance and value to say.
Yeah.
In that moment, which leads us into the topic that we're going to talk about today, which is personal standards, because that, to me, Pastor, was one of my personal standards. I thought, if I'm going to call in on a radio talk show and there's going to be hundreds of people in the tri-state area listening to me.
You wanted to stand out and sound intelligent.
Well, I just wanted not to, I didn't want to spew the same thing everybody else was. And I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, but I would hear, and even when I was hosting, people calling and go, yeah, you're right. I think you're right about that. And I'm like, okay, give me something else here.
Yeah.
Thank you for the affirmation, but let's have a conversation. And that's always something I wanted to do, was have a quick conversation. And you want to be able to build off that. You want that host to be able to take that part of that conversation and build off of that, off of what you said. And there were a couple of times that I totally changed the tenor of the Roten show, or somebody calling in when I was guest hosting. I might have a preconceived thought of where I wanted to go. Somebody had and it sparked more conversation.
Sure.
It kept sparking conversation. And I loved those times because now everybody was getting involved.
Yeah.
It's like that quarterback, the quarterback that throws to 8 different receivers in a game. He gets everybody involved. That's what I wanted to do with the conversation.
Yeah. So you've been teaching, actually just finished up 3 lessons in a row of personal standards.
By the way, you can find one of those lessons here on our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Because we had snow and
No.
Yeah. And by the way, I want to just quickly pivot off here, and we'll pivot back. It amazes me, the people that I have heard and the things that I've seen that say, well, back in the old days, we didn't cancel church for nothing. If we had 10 foot of snow, we went to church, bless God. And I'm thinking to myself, and somebody asked me that, and I said, you got to understand something. Schools cancel school because it's a liability. Pastors want to protect their flock because it's a liability, putting somebody out on the road. Now, if you decide to go on your own somewhere, that's on you.
Also, memories fade. They did cancel church. Yeah. There was times where the state would close the roads down. You couldn't go.
Well, the blizzard of '93 that we had. Yeah. I mean, nobody could go anywhere. But I know
exactly where I was when the blizzard of '93 hit.
Yep.
I was on the road to my girlfriend's house.
On that Saturday?
We were absolutely. They were talking about they were closing the roads. I was engaged. I got married in February of '95. This tells you how close it was. And I said, oh, my goodness, how long are the roads going to be closed? And I determined if the roads are going to close, they're going to close with me at my girlfriend's house. Now, no funny business is going on there. Her parents there and everything. But we slept in separate rooms and all that. But I said, I'm going to get stuck with my girlfriend, who's now my wife.
Yep.
And I just didn't want to go that long without seeing her.
I worked at a grocery store, and we were working on that Saturday. And I was trying to push buggies in the snow, and that buggy was just sliding all over the place, and people were coming in there by the droves.
There wasn't no bread, that's no meat.
Well, and I worked at a grocery store. I was the carryout, and so I had a big, heavy North Carolina Tar Heels jacket with a hood on it, starter jacket, that I'd bought off a friend of mine, and I wore it that day because it was warm and it was water resistant, and it was the warmest thing I had, and I knew I was going to be carrying out groceries that day. And I can just remember that snow just rolling in. That was the first time in my life I had ever heard the term nor'easter.
Yeah.
Now you can go on YouTube. I was talking to a friend of mine last week in Arkansas, and he goes, I said, yeah. I said, I was watching this guy, and he goes, Ryan Hall? Yeah, that's the same guy I watched. There's a guy that does weather on YouTube, has got millions of followers on YouTube just because of, and he's from Eastern Kentucky. He breaks it down. So see, rednecks and hillbillies are useful people. We are useful, but
that was a Dumb and Dumber reference.
We are useful. But again, if your personal standard in that situation is, I'm going to go to church no matter what. Doesn't matter if there's 50 feet of snow on the ground, I'm going to church. Bless God, that's great for you.
Yeah.
But I know as a pastor, and I know you well enough to know that you don't make those calls lightly.
Actually, let me tell you what I've done. I have a pastor friend that pastors a Church of God, a church, and he's like, I don't know what they call. I think they call him an overseer. We call him presbyter. And I heard him talking one time, and I took this from him. He has a council. It's called the Pastor's Council.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses that pastor's council to make hard decisions, take the heat off of him. So when I became pastor, the first thing I done, and so if I'm canceling church, I'm not making that decision by myself. I'm actually asking the pastor's council, which is elected by the church, the people, and so I will take their advice. I don't have to. I can override it, but they give me good counsel, and unless I have a really good reason not to, I'm going to go with their decision. And in every case, I go with their decision. The last time they closed, I didn't want to close, but I realized afterwards, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I listened to them, because had I not, I would have got people in a little bit of a dangerous situation.
Well, here's the thing too. We have to use wisdom. The thing that the foundation of any good personal standard has to be wisdom.
Yeah.
Because you can say to yourself, okay, I feel like I should do this. I want to do this. But maybe it's not prudent for me to do it right now.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe it's not prudent for me to, I'll share this with you. When I first started podcasting, I reached out to people that were already podcasting. What should I do? What kind of equipment, things like that. And they were so kind, and they were very helpful. I didn't understand what they were trying to tell me. I thought I did. Looking back, and I have said this to people at podcasts, I said, look, if I had knowing them what I know now, I would have got a really, really good microphone and a really, really good webcam. And I would have done it that way, because I bought a lot of equipment that I still have that I don't need.
Yeah.
But I knew when we were going to do this podcast, I knew the mics that we wanted to use. Just over time, you just develop that wisdom. And now, I feel like we've got a good setup. It's real simple. It's real clean. I go back and listen to our podcast. I'm like, man, that audio sounds really good, and things like that. But it's I tell you why I wanted to do the personal standards is because I don't believe that we spend a lot of time. I think we do things because we've always done them, but we don't delve into the why behind it.
So that brings me to the why. The personal standard is really derived from personal values.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you value? What is it that's important to you?
Well, and I say this to my family all the time, and I've said this on social media, and you'll understand where I'm coming from because of your heavy sales background. Like me, you have a very heavy sales background. If your why isn't clear, your what doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so I like that I like how you brought that, because there's so many people out there that are saying, buy this course from me. We talked in an earlier podcast about digital creators. A lot of people want to be content creators, especially in this space, because it's so wide open. But if your why isn't clear, your what doesn't matter, because there's so many people out there doing it. Why should I pay attention to you?
Sure.
Why should I look at your content versus somebody else's? And if you can't give me a good why,
yeah,
your what doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you couldn't tell your customer why they should buy from you,
sure,
what you're selling really doesn't matter to them that much.
You have to, you have to know your product. You have to know why they're going to be better off having your product. Same thing in ministry. I have to know why people are better off accepting the Lord Jesus Christ. And it's not. My dad has he said this since I've been a little kid. Even if there were no God, I'd still choose this life. And the reason he would say that is because he noticed a marked difference in the life he lived, the quality of life that he had, the respect and of other people that he got, because they knew him to be a truthful person, because they knew he had really, I would say, not just biblical type standards, but he had personal standards that were derived from his beliefs and his values that come from the scriptures.
We talked about your grandpa and his influence. What I remember most of, and I talked about this last night as I was teaching, what I learned from your grandfather, who's the founding pastor of this church, what I learned from him was his personal standards were not going to change. No matter, it didn't matter if somebody says, well, I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. I don't really care for that. Your grandfather, what I admired about him, and I didn't see it when I was younger, right? Because you don't see it when you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s. Now that you're in your 50s, you see it. His personal standard was not going to change.
Yeah.
And it was always consistent.
Yeah.
You may not have liked it. And I loved your granddad. He could be like blunt force trauma.
He was. He loved people, but he was. Listen, you told a story about him, and I kind of have a little bit more of a background understanding on that story. My grandfather, you never seen him wear anything but long sleeves.
Yep. Now, that was his personal standard.
Absolutely was. And he didn't believe that you had to wear long sleeves. They didn't believe it was wrong to not wear long sleeves. Nothing like that. But one day, someone come to him, because my grandpa was a Marine, and he had a big tattoo right here on his forearm. Somebody come to him and said, brother, that really offends me that you don't cover that up. And I'm going to tell you right now, my grandpa thought that was silly, but he respected it, and he loved the person. And he said, you know what? I will wear long sleeves, and I'll cover that from now on. His conviction wasn't about the tattoo that was shown. His conviction was about not offending his brother.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the scripture tells us that we're not supposed to offend. And so from that point on, now let me tell you how deeply that personal standard permeated his thinking. I'm his grandson. I lived with him for a year. I can count on my two hands how many times I've seen my grandpa in a short sleeve shirt, even in his home. He would, if I saw him in an undershirt, he would take off running like he didn't have anything on at all. And he'd say, excuse me, pardon me, son, and and I thought, my goodness, Papa, because I always wore short sleeve, right?
Yeah.
And even for this, talk about personal standards. I'm getting ready today, and I'm on the phone with my friend, and he said, well, why are you trying to find a long sleeve shirt? And I said, well, I just always do, because we have people that watch the podcast that may have that feeling, that they may think, well, you need, as a minister, you need to wear a long sleeve. And so it may be and I know it is, a very slim minority.
I'm wearing an Adidas pullover that I got on sale out in Oklahoma. But no, I see what you're saying. And I'm the same way, right? When I go out into the business place, I usually wear a pullover, something like this, but I've got a button-down collared shirt on top, underneath it. I remember one time I was working out in Oklahoma, and it was August. And in our company, the requirement was guys wear a sport coat, button down. We didn't have to wear a tie, but button down collared shirt underneath the sport coat, pair of slacks. And I walked out of the restaurant and it was 108. And I'm like, oh boy. And my boss said, wear a sport coat, but wear a golf shirt underneath it. Be a little bit cooler, But again, what I was thinking about with that thought, and I can see your granddad's picture over in the corner as we're recording. Today it feels like we have a PO'd society, a perpetually offended society.
Yeah.
And I wonder how, now it is perfectly acceptable in some churches, because you'll see some ministers, they'll roll their sleeves up and they're tatted from the arm all the way down, and they're like, bless God, I'm tatted, and it's like, I just don't believe, for me, that is a personal standard, that I don't have any tattoos whatsoever. I have always had a personal conviction against them. Again, I'm not trying to say that anybody, you may have one, you may feel like it's okay. For me, it's not.
I got a cousin, and we call him David Michael. David Michael. And he's always had a saying. We had a bunch of friends, he and I, hung around a bunch of different people, and had a bunch of friends with, and they'd say, won't you get a tattoo? And this is what he'd always say: you don't put a bumper sticker on a Bentley. I would always laugh at that.
That is a great point. That's a great point. But, when you get to be 75, 80 years old, that tattoo doesn't look nearly as good as it once did, because there's dents in the Bentley. So
I've been asked so many times about tattoos, and I'm not wanting to get off into this, but I've been asked so many times, and we go back to that Old Testament scripture right there, and then the truth is it's a little bit murky. However, the Orthodox Church and the Orthodox Jewish people seem pretty united in their stances on it. In modern day, we challenge everything. But these are old things. These, like abortion. Abortion is not a new issue.
No.
The early church fathers, the apostolic church fathers. When I say apostolic, what I mean when I say that, for some of you who are not familiar, an apostolic church father is an early church writer that knew an apostle personally. They address abortion. It was an issue back then. It was a sin then. It's a sin now. It's, nothing new. Personal standards. Let me tell you a personal standard that I have because of a friend. I used to wear work clothes everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wasn't a pastor. At the time, I was an assistant pastor. I was active in the church, and I was a minister. People knew that. And one day my friend said, you never have to worry about anybody mistaking you for a preacher. I said, what are you talking about? He said, the way you dress all the time. Always in a work shirt, always dressing in work pants, and always, you ain't ever going to have to worry about that. That's one thing. And man, I felt convicted about that. And I thought, he's right.
Well, just tell him you were getting ready to do the work of the Lord.
Getting ready to do the work. Well, I would, Brother Micah Spears, who's gone on to be with the Lord now, but he and I done a lot of stuff together. And so, always wearing my shirt that I was painting in, or helping do plumbing or whatever. And all the time, the only time I ever dressed up was when I come to church. And I started thinking about, like I said, it changed. And I said, I need to look this way. Is it a sin? No. But I wanted to represent what I'm supposed to be representing. I wanted to, it's just like, listen, my son, a lot of people have trouble getting their teenage boys to take a shower. Well, my youngest boy, Jonah, that is not a problem. The problem is getting him out of the shower.
Yeah.
He wants to take 2 showers a day. I'm like, son, you don't need 2 showers.
Well,
he loves to smell good. He loves to be clean. I get it, but it was so, even as a young teenager, he was that way.
well, and I do, for me, every morning is my time to do that because it wakes me up and things like that. But I'll say this, for me, the older I get, the personal standards that I have, they're more concrete for me. What I had to do several years ago was I had so many things bouncing around in my mind at any given time that, and forgive me, I was up really early this morning taking my son to the airport. And I'm like, I'm sleepy, I'm fighting it. But Pastor, what I'm saying is, for me, I had to put a governor on my mind and just say, I am not going to, if you want something from me, if you need me to do something, I want you to distill it down to exactly what you need. I don't need, because I used to be this way. I used to be that person that said 15 things when I could say 3. And the older I get, I'm like, distill that down.
I think your wife would still say you did that.
No, Tanya will tell you I am very much a distill it down. I'm like, you know what? You got too many things going on in your head, because she'll move from one subject. I mean, she'll just go boom.
In sales, you may have heard this. In sales, that's a thing. You can classify people. Now, what I'm about to tell you, you're going to say there's no way, but if you'll pay attention, you'll see that this is the case. You can classify people according to shape.
Yep.
And so you can distill something a very slim picture of their personality, but it is an important part because it's what they care about when it comes to sales. If you see somebody that has a square head, very squarish, blockish body, that person almost always is only interested in the abbreviated facts. If you're going to sell them, they don't want to know all the details. Yeah. They want to get down to the point right now. I don't have time to waste. Tell me the point. If you see somebody with a rounded body, a rounded face, that person is interested in fun, because the square is all about work, right? The round is all about fun, and so you sell them on fun. You get somebody with a rectangle, that person is almost always concerned about safety.
Yep.
You get a person with a diamond shape, in other words, their cheeks will come out, even their body, they'll have a V-shaped body. That person is concerned about looks. They tend to be more vain in their motivations.
Yep.
And so if you wanted to watch, there's actually, they used to teach this to doctors to help them with bedside manner. This is where this comes out. So, and you say, well, I don't see how that works. Well, people that love fun love to eat.
Yeah.
And they get round. And people, there was a particular med student who had a roundish shape, and then he became a doctor. He full-fledged, and he started getting respect. And all of a sudden, because of that, he started working out, and he changed from a round shape to a diamond shape. And his motivations and what he found important, his values changed. And this is what this whole thing's about, is values. About this, you're looking at someone and saying, this is what they value, so this is how I'll sell them, this is what I'll talk about, because this is what they care about. And that's what we're talking about, personal standards. What do you value? So you value getting to the point. You value your time, is really what it comes down to, and clear communication. And so with personal standards, this is what you have to ask yourself. Write down, just get a piece of paper and write it down. What do I value?
Well, and let me throw a caveat in there about value. You have to define what value means to you. Okay? Because, and I've said this to a lot of people, we in business and things like that, we try to define value for the customer.
Yeah.
We tried to define, okay, in preaching and teaching, okay, well, I'm going to preach and teach this way because this is what they need to hear. We're trying to define the value for them, for the other person. And I would say it this way with what you value. Define value. This is how I define value. Okay. I'm not trying to define it for anybody else. This is how I define value. I say it this way. There's a vast difference between value and appreciation. And here's how I define value. I say to myself, what are 3 things I don't want to start any day without?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
If, as far as possessions, if my house were burning down and I had 5 minutes to save something,
yeah,
or a group of things, what are 5 things that I would save? And here's another way I define it. Would you lock it up?
Yeah. So really what we're talking about in all these things, when we say value, people may think, well, how's it different from it? If we go down to what's important to you. That's really what do you value? That's my values are things that are most important to me. And so when I find that list, when I'm making that list, I'm saying, what is most important to me? I can tell you that my relationship with God is my number one value.
What am I not going to do without?
Yeah, but that's my number one value. It's my highest value. I value my relationship with my family, and I value my relationship with people. Those are my 3 highest values.
Well, let me jump in here real quick, because something that and forgive me for interrupting, this is something. A friend of mine lost his house in a fire. It was so abrupt that his son was up late at night playing a video game. He and his wife, his son smelled something, and they literally had time to get out with what they were wearing. And he said, I didn't even grab my wallet, my cell phone. Okay. For me, learning that from his experience, I have a little bag when I travel that I put everything in. I put cell phone in it, or not but my cell phone's right next to my bed when I'm traveling. I put wallet, keys, watch, wedding ring, because I want to be able to grab it, my Bible. I've got a pair of slippers that I travel with on the road. I can throw a hoodie on. If that hotel room catches on fire, or the hotel's catching on fire, I can at least get out with my wallet, keys, things like that, things that I would need and then heaven forbid, I'd have I would have at least clothes or underwear, things like that to change into, things like that. So I've learned from that, I can't do without this. And that's the point that you're making, is I cannot live life without a relationship with God. I just can't. I can't do it. I will not be able to function as I want to function without that.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's take, for instance, we take a bath in the morning. Why? We value relationships. Why would taking a shower every day have anything to do with it? Because I know that even people I like and I like to talk to, if they're not clean, I'm probably not going to want to get close to them for a very long time.
Well, we don't want to make anybody's eyes water.
Yeah, so I want to have that. Other personal values. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give some examples so that you can, at home, decide and write down, because I think this is important for everybody. If you was to write a value statement for yourself, what would it be? What's most important to you? And where down that list, if you do this, you'll find out that some things that you're prioritizing, you probably shouldn't. And you need to be prioritizing other things. Do you value money more than you value your family?
Yeah.
Probably not. However, if you look at where you're spending your time, what does that say that you're valuing most? Most men work so they can spend time with their family, so that they can have enjoyable time with their family. So it's whatever. I would suggest this. I would suggest getting a piece of paper, writing down what is it that I value most in life, and it will give you a little bit of an insight into why you do things.
Let me bring this point to the table as well. When people think of consistency, and really developing your personal standards is about creating a more consistent life, a more consistent mindset, things like that. Do you realize, and I know you do, I'm saying, I don't know that people realize you can create negative consistency in your life.
Sure. That's called habit.
Yes. Well, you can be, okay, I'm just gonna plain talk here. Okay. If you have a reputation of being a butthole,
oh Lord,
that is. Well, I'm just gonna say it like my mama would have said.
Say it like it is.
If you have that consistency of you're not a nice person, you're a jerk. You don't.
Jerk.
Yeah,
that's a better word.
Yeah. Okay. But if you have that reputation, it's probably because you've built that consistency of being that person.
Some people value being thought of.
Oh yeah, that's their calling card. I've
known people like that.
Well, and it's what in sports, Bob Knight comes to mind, legendary basketball coach.
Yeah.
People that played for him, guys that played for him, love him. He passed away a year or two ago.
Purdue coach, right?
He coached at Indiana. Coached at Indiana.
That was the same state.
Yeah. Bob Knight is thought to be a first-class jerk, but Bob Knight was a winner. His players knew what he was doing, and that's the public persona that Bob Knight carried, was first-class jerk. You look at a guy like Mike Krzyzewski on the other side, played for Bob Knight at Army in the 60s. Mike Krzyzewski is universally considered as a teacher, a mentor, someone with a better reputation, because they handled themselves both very consistent, but one had a consistent public persona this way, one had a consistent public persona this way. And look, here's the thing. You can build that personal standard to where in public, when I do my job, I'm this way. And you can also have a side of you with your family that you can go, you know what? That person exists from 9 to 5.
Yeah.
When I come home, I'm going to be the other way. Now, I don't like doing that. I don't like anymore. I did it when I was younger. I don't like being two different people.
Yeah. I think in the word we're looking for here is authentic. I would say being authentic is certainly one of my values. I'd say a lot of people are the same way. I am who I am, no matter who I'm around. I'm not different. I'm not different when I'm around my children. I'm not different when I'm just who I am. And I value that. A lot of times we might say, well, I'm a realist, or I'm this. Authentic is what I want to be. I just am who I am, and I'm content with it. I'm happy. There was a time in my life where I was not happy with who I was. And I remember praying, Lord, help me just to be content with my station in life. Mm-hmm. Help me to be content. If God wants me to have more, He'll open up the opportunity for me to have more. And if God wants me to stay right where I'm at, well, I need to just learn to have that perfect contentment. And contentment is also a value.
Well, people want to have consistency because it is a part of their personal brand. You hear a lot of people talk about a coworker of mine. We were talking one day, and he goes, "You're really trying hard to build that personal brand of intentional encouragement." And I said, "No, I'm not. that's the person I want to be. If people think that it's a personal brand, okay, I can't make them think that. But that is such a forced cliche today. Well, your personal brand is this. Listen, I just want to be, to your point, I just want to be Brian. And Brian believes with all of his heart in intentional encouragement.
Yeah.
And I believe that everybody on the planet needs intentional encouragement. And so it's not that I'm trying to build a personal brand. It's just, for me, that's a standard that I want to live.
I think we all have a brand. It's just that some people intentionally try to build it, and it may be a little fake. And then other people just embrace who they are and have a brand. I told my wife, I said, I need a logo. I was just teasing her. She's already got one in her mind. Her logo is a queen bee. She thinks she's the queen of England.
Well, what I love about your wife, what I love about Sister Carrie and her personal standard is she is a quiet force.
She is.
She's a quiet force.
She's so much like my grandma Fairburn.
Yes, there's a lot of
personality. There's so much like that. Since we're on the subject of personal standards, how can we possibly go here without talking about personal convictions? Because personal convictions is tied at the hip with personal standards. So what do we mean? There are things that I'm going to have as a personal standard that I'm going to feel a conviction against that aren't necessarily wrong or a sin, but for me they are.
Yes.
And, the Bible says that if you esteem a thing a sin, for you it's a sin. I know people that used to have a problem gambling.
Yep.
They will not play rummy. They will not play with cards. I know people that will not celebrate certain holidays because they believe a certain thing about it, and so therefore that is a personal thing. If they were to celebrate it, it would be a sin for them because they esteem it a sin. I know people just all sorts of different personal convictions, and I'm actually shocked when I find out someone doesn't have a personal conviction, because it seems to me that when you get close to the Lord, there will be. I think of Isaiah; he gets in the holiness of God and says, "Woe is me, for I'm a man of unclean lips, and I dwell amongst a people of unclean lips." This was a devout Jew. This man, or a not a devout Jew, but he was a devout Israelite.
Well, remember people that years ago that said, "I won't go and eat in a restaurant that serves alcohol."
Oh, yeah, yeah.
"I won't go to a grocery store that sells alcohol." Now, you can't go to...
You would starve, and you wouldn't be able to eat.
Exactly. Cracker Barrel sells alcohol. But I love the fact that you brought up personal convictions. Okay, so let's go here for a second with personal convictions. Our denominational faith for years tried to force a universal set of personal convictions on everybody.
Sure.
And I say that because it's not that way anymore. And I saw a lot of rebellion against those things. They were only convictions because the pastor taught it. And it was more conformity than conviction.
Brother, we live in a society. All you pastors out there, you understand what I'm about to say. We live in a society to where the people have just as much information at their fingertips.
Oh, my. Yeah.
They don't have to know it. They can look it up, and AI is going to find it for them and tell them, and it's going to tell them the arguments for both sides of it. Then they're going to be able to make just as much of an educated evaluation as you are.
Well, let me jump in there real quick because of what you just said about AI. I was listening to a program on the way over here to record, and they were talking about AI, and one the host and the guests were talking about the fact that AI is going to get to the point to where it's going to be spun as a time saver. Sure. So the example that they made was it's going to know what you buy grocery wise. and it's going to go ahead for you.
Place the order.
And make your grocery list and place your order. But here's where I see it kind of going a little sideways. It's going to say, you probably shouldn't buy those Oreo cookies. I'm going to take Oreo cookies off the list because you're 258 pounds and you don't need Oreo cookies.
It will absolutely. But remember, AI is a machine, and it's only going to do what you tell it you want it to do. And it will do what you tell it. You talk about time saving. I use ChatGPT.
I don't want the AI to tell me not to buy Oreos. If I want to buy Oreos, bless God, I'm going to buy Oreos.
If the AI is telling you not to buy Oreos, you've asked it to remind you.
Well,
so you know, my son uses ChatGPT as a personal trainer. He'll say, "Hey, I'm at this weight. I'll lift. This is what my lifting regimen is. These are the machines I have in my gym. This is how much weight I have. This is what my goal is. What do I need to do to change my workout to achieve my goal?" And ChatGPT will give him a detailed list, and he'll go right by that. And let me tell you this. Did you know that they have estimated now that someone who uses an AI such as ChatGPT, that their IQ effectively increases by 20 points? And if you don't understand what 20 points is the difference between mentally handicapped and in the low range of normal, of average. 20 points is the difference between the average college graduate with a 4-year degree, bachelor's degree, and a genius. It's that close. I think 150 or 160 is considered genius. The average IQ of a college graduate is about 135. At least I believe I read that. So, so 20 points puts you up there. It's huge. I can tell you that with I got a friend, and we tease around a lot, and we will respond to each other by copying and pasting our text messages into ChatGPT and telling it to give us a response, and we'll tell it the direction we want it to go, and we'll post them back and forth. And we can tell, we both know what's happening, because once you're used to using ChatGPT, you can see the way that you understand that it wasn't AI that done it.
See, I want to be, and some of you may get this reference, okay? I am more, you've tried to pull me along to ChatGPT in the last couple of years.
It's a great study tool.
And I have been resistant because when I mention this name, some of you will get the reference. I am more like Ron Swanson. There was a character on a TV show called Parks and Rec. I am more like Ron Swanson. Okay. I don't want computers. I don't want anything, and I use technology, but I am like, no. And there was a sketch one time that they brought Ron Swanson in. They were bringing him in front of, I think city council or something. They were trying to do an investigation, and he looked at the camera and he said, "I'm going to go in and answer every one of their questions with a question." And he did that, and they said they asked him,
people that do that.
Yeah, they said, were you aware of this situation? And he answered back. He said, "Would I be here if I were aware of the situation?" Mm. And they said, "Do you know what quid pro quo is?" And he goes, "Do you know what quid pro quo is?" He said, and I did that to my son one night. I told him, I answered every one of his questions with a question. In personal standards, Pastor, there are times, and I believe this, I am not a person. My friend Tom wrote, and I love him dearly, but he says question everything, and I am not that person. Because when you begin to question everything, you will question everything. You will question things you hear preached and taught. You will question things you read in the Bible. Did God really say that? What I would say about personal standards is don't question everything, but do a self-review.
Yeah.
And say to yourself, okay, ask yourself one question. Am I growing? Am I growing in the direction that I want to grow in? If not, okay, what needs to change? If I am, then ask yourself a follow-up question. What's something that I can do to be even better?
Yeah.
Make it very simple. That's what I tell people with personal standards. And you have hit on that. Your son wants to be better trained. He's not asking it, hey, do this for me.
No.
He's just asking it one question. What can I do better?
Yeah. How can I? Yeah, my son, he loves lifting weights. Loves lifting weights. I bought him a weight set when he was 14 years old. And I thought I went and bought some 4x4s and I created a rack for him. I wasn't going to buy him a bench. I thought we had a flat bench. I thought this rack will be fine. I had no idea what he was going to do. Within about 4 months, I'd lay in bed with him out there working out and would worry, wondering if the bench or the rack that I built him was going to last. So I went out and spent some money to get him a really good quality bench with some safeties on it. And he sort of, I don't guess he really outgrew that, but with the weight he uses now, he actually, when my son's bench pressing, we have Olympic weights. They're not cheap. They're the really nice Olympic weights. His 45-pound bar, Olympic bar is Boeing.
Yeah.
He's benching like 355. That's his max, but he's all about that 1 rep max and trying to get up to 405 before 2026. And which I'm not really thrilled about. I told him, I said, you're gonna hurt your joints, and when you get older, you're gonna regret all this. So I said, hit your goal and then quit. Worry about bodybuilding more than you're worried about powerlifting. Yeah. But anyways, that's it. You talk about personal standards. Well, besides absolute cleanliness, his work. One of his personal standards, he's wanted a job so bad since he's been 15, and I've been afraid to let go, and in many ways slow walked it by just not helping him because I was just nervous about him getting off in the workforce, and it's my last one. Like I said, my other one already left, and he's an adult, got his own life, got a third child on the way, and I just didn't want to hardly let go of my youngest. And so, but now he went out on his own, got him a job and at Chick-fil-A, really proud of him. He done this all on his own. And, but it's because he wants to make his own money. He's conservative. He doesn't like spending my money. But, when I put gas in his car, he won't hardly drive his car because he values the fact that I bought him that gas and he doesn't want to be wasteful. And so I'm proud of him for having those type of personal standards,
Well, it's something we all need. It's something that anybody can do. We'll pick this topic up the next time. We'll go a little bit further, but I want to be respectful of our audience's time today. That's a great place to end. Yeah. Because, again, when you set that personal standard, just keep working toward it every day. Keep working toward it. I've loved this conversation again. I mean, you said it best a little while ago. We could go hours on something like this, but
everybody knows it.
But we're gonna be respectful of the clock. Pastor, again, always good to be with you. Hope you've enjoyed this conversation today. For Pastor Aaron Fairburn, I'm Brian Sexton. Thank you for joining us today on the BAC Podcast. Be blessed in Jesus' name.
Thank you for joining us today on the BAC Podcast, the Bible, Apostolics, and Current Event. Bible Apostolic Church is located at 3521 16th Street Road, Huntington, West Virginia. Service times are Sunday morning at 10 a.m. for Sunday School, 11 a.m. for evangelistic service, and Wednesday evenings at 6 p.m. for Bible study. For more information on Bible Apostolic Church, please go to the Bible Apostolic Church Facebook page. God bless you, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on the BAC Podcast.